Hello. Woo. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Human Narratives. This is your host, Dorinda, of course. Oh my goodness. So it is Black History Month. Month? We get one, I guess. I say we get 365 days a year. We all, every human beings, get 365 days a year, right? Especially those who are put aside as vulnerable population. Why do they need to be termed as vulnerable population? Because we human decided to do so, I guess. Well, so anyway, welcome to Black History Month. I'm starting off with, of course, Awilo Longoba. He's a Congolese African artist, a musician, of course. And of course, I started this with a introductory into today's podcast because my best friend who passed away a couple of years ago, Valentin Lupembe, as you can see over here, us a couple of years ago when we used to run track and field. Um, she's a Congolese, and I wanted to just be able to honor not just my people, African Americans, Black people, and be able to honor also all people, right? I don't believe in just a particular date being set to honor humanity or human lives, right? No. So therefore, people may say, "Oh, why creating this podcast in February 16th?" Because guess what? Every day is a celebration of life. Every life, human life, Black lives, and I want to honor my people from all the way from Africa, all the way to America, all the way all over the world because we are beautiful when we are together, when we're collective, when we're working in harmony. But of course, it's Black History Month. And of course, like I said, I dedicated not only this podcast, not only to my people, and to every people that I honor and I love and I respect deeply in my heart, because that's what God is. And what God is what I try to, of course, thrive for daily. I'm not perfect, but I thrive for daily to be in His ways, not be Him, but in His ways, so that I can be a reflection of what He wants me to be on this earth. So, hey, my one of my heavenly angel, I honor this to you, and of course, like I said, Black History Month. So let's get into today's discussion, which I'm so very excited about. I got all dressed up. So one of the things I love about being an African is the food, the culture, not just an African, the Caribbeans, and so many diverse different culture. Cubana. Oh my goodness. Mexico, Puerto Rico, and Venezuela, Dominican. Nah. Oh, I remember when I went to Dominican. My husband and I, we loved it. It was beautiful. The food, it was natural, beautiful. Culture is just so beautiful around the world, right? And when you get to experience it, it is one of the beautiful things ever. If you have the opportunity and the ability to travel and see the world, do it. That's my goal. I already told the Lord that. I said, hey, Lord, we have that type of relationship. Hey, I want to see the world. I don't want to be in heaven and have to fly around and see it. I want to see the world while I'm here in human form. So, but just getting back into today's topic. Um, so black. This is Black History Month, like I said, right? And some of the black leaders in Americas that have made impact in our cultures that I wanted to talk about. Of course, as a host of the Human Narratives, I have to do an introduction. I cannot continue and not say this. All right. I am a born natural African from Sierra Leone, West African, or Africa, but I'm African. I'm an African, but I represent Black people. I love people. I love all people. I love my people, and I understand the struggles that we've been through to be where we are. I understand the struggles that my mother have to go through to be where I am, even though, whatever differences at times family have. But I understand those things. And that is very pertinent in being able to understand history and also being able to adapt, but also make sure that you change how we continue to understand what history is, not what is just portrayed to us as what history should be. So it is very important as parents, as families, as educators, as leaders, as communicators or communities, right? Not communicators or communicators, or communities, that we are educating our children about who we are, to in other for them not to be confused when they do go into society, into school systems that, of course, laws and policies sometimes impact what is being taught, um, what they know. So educating. So let them know your history. As parents, it is your responsibility for your child to understand your history and where you're from. And your history does not involve hate. It involves history. So if we need to go to the Webster Dictionary to understand what history is, maybe we do. So I am not going to culturally define what history is, but that's all. So like I said, black leaders in African American culture that have impacted us, that impacted me. I moved into the United States, or I came into the United States because the fact that I had a civil war in my country. I left my home, and of course, I'm not gonna, I left my home in a circumstances, in a situation. I was gonna say I'm not going to, but I left my home in a circumstances, in a situation where it was a civil war, and I had to leave that space to get into a safe space, but also wanting better opportunities. The adults that I was living with wanting better opportunities, um, wanting to come to the United States. We ended up coming to the United States. But as at an early on age, I knew where I was coming from and what I had left behind: a mother, a father. I was fleeing from bullets, a whole bunch of bullets flying around, of course, right? Um, but I was living away a sister, a brother, sisters, you know, brothers, aunts, uncles, but I was leaving behind people that I knew were fierce. I knew were capable of surviving, but at the end of the day, I was a very young child. I think I don't even know how old I was, maybe 8, 9, whatever age I was when I left. And when I came into, to the United States, it was a place of opportunity. Everybody wanted to come to the United States. As a child, I was like, "Ooh, I get to go, and everybody wants to be here." Oh my God, and I took it seriously. It was important to me because I saw how many people wanted to come here and then had the opportunity to come here. I knew how many times we had to wake up at 2 a.m. in the morning, at 3 a.m. in the morning to go for interviews in the embassies because we didn't want everybody in the compound to know what was going on with our situation because you don't know who is for you or who's against you, and that's one of the toughest fight to have to fight in life. you know it's when you have a pure-hearted situation that's going on in your life and you're trying to survive, but at the same time you don't know who is for you or is not for you, and you're among your own people. So we would get up early in the morning and go early. And as a child, I will absorb everything and I will hold on to everything. And these were not my mama and father that I was with. That's another podcast. That's another podcast show later on in life. but but these were people who still took me in and supported me. And of course, I also provided support as much as I could as a child in the space that I could, you know. But at the end of the day, we came into this country. And one of the funniest things as I'm going into this podcast about black, being black in America and being a leader in America, it's so beautiful because this was my story as I've been able to be transformed as a leader into this culture and as I continue to be by the grace of God, right? You know, I remember the first time we came into the United States and oh my goodness, we were placed in the hood. We didn't know what the hood was. We're from Africa. We're like everywhere is just this normally is where I came from. I came from a barracks. My father was a police officer, so I lived in a barracks, like a military barracks. I live in a police barracks. So I was like, okay, this is the hood. I, I was not used to the gunshot all over the place, but it happened. I got used to that life. I survived that life. I went to school in that life and I graduated from that life. Well, I removed myself from that life and I went to a private school and I graduated from that life, but I still was able to, through the family that supported me to be here in the United States, to be able to go to school and whatever. I think that the United States and America, and for me to be able to have all of these opportunities as an African to come from a West African country as Sierra Leone to come into the United States of America to have these opportunities, I have to give props to my leaders who came before me to ensure that this is possible for me, for it to happen. Because there were times where I was, as a young child in the United States, I was so insecure because of some of the discrimination that I experienced, being told that I could not enter into a restaurant to use it to pee because of the skin of my tone. And I didn't understood why. Because this was not common in the area that I was born in. But it was common in an area where there was racism and differential in how we see each other. That's the impact. As a child, coming from a country where everybody see everybody the same, and I come into a country where I'm searching for colleges to be educated, and we pause to go use the restroom, and we are told as a group of black students that we could not go into a hotel reservation to use a restroom because we're black. And I experienced that. And then I graduated from college to go into the field of helping people and understanding in children, and doing investigation and understanding that I could not enter through the front door of someone's house because they told me that because of the color of my tone, I had to enter through the back door to do an investigation to ensure that their child were safe. But yet, I still honor this beautiful country because guess what? I came from a country that didn't have or protect the resources that where I am today. This beautiful country has been able to provide. But it has been able to provide these things for me. I truly understand that because of the leaders that came before me. Martin Luther King Jr., MLK Jr. We all know about that. We just celebrated MLK in January. He led the civil rights movement. He inspired generations with his speeches, right? And activism. It wasn't easy. It's never easy. Change is never easy. That's what we must understand. It doesn't have to be violent, like our leaders have taught us, but it's never easy. But you also have to understand what pace do you want to take in implementing the change. Don't allow someone to push you into a pace that is uncomfortable for you, right? Because what has changed to you? Malcolm X. He advocated for the Black Panther empowerment and was a key figure in the Nation of Islam. I was born into a family where my mother was born into a Muslim family and my father came from a Christian family. Through love stories, my mom ended up converting into becoming a Christian, because she was born into a Muslim family. And because of my father, she became a Christian, of course, to be able to honor him and love him. That was her choice, of course, right? You know, so I honor these leaders not because of who they served, because of what they stood for. Human rights. That's what we all should stand for. Human rights. Rosa Parks. She sparked the Montgomery bus boycott. It influenced the fight against segregation. When years ago, when I was touring for colleges and trying to figure out what college I wanted to attend, of course, ended up attending the University of Gators. And later on, Our Lady of the Lakes, San Antonio. But when I was touring and trying to figure out which colleges I wanted to attend through one of the colleges, one of the programs that I always honor and respect, the Upward Bound program, Jacksonville, Florida, and who mentored me in becoming who I am. There's so many people who mentored me in becoming who I am and who I continue to be, and I'm so grateful for those leaders in my life. Um, but anyway, but the Upward Brown program and Rosa Park and all of those things. Getting back into the topic, but she led the Montgomery bus boycotts, which influenced a lot of fights against segregation and all of those things. And as a result of that, as a result of that, we're able to share a lot of the different spaces that we share with with every one of us as humans, as it should be, right? Angela Davis, activist and scholar known for her work on prison and reform in Black feminism. You know, um, not how to core, but of course, having history working in the prison system. This is beautiful to me. A lot of times, when I tell people, oh, yeah, I have history of working in a prison, they're like, what? You work in a prison? I'm like, yes. And I work in a male population prison. And it was a beautiful learning experience for me. It was. I mean, I cursed a lot in those experiences. And then I realized, okay, I don't want to be cursing this much. But, I got to change my atmosphere. But then I also learned how to deal with so many different personalities in that atmosphere. And it allowed me as a clinician to be able to serve and work with different people, of course, that is within my competency to work with. Different people that the good Lord wants me fit to work with. Because that's one of my prayers, many that I always ask, that I've always asked of him since I've obtained my licenses, to ensure that he send the people that are right in my path, of course, right? So Angela Davis, and then we have John Lewis, who is a congressman and a freedom rider who played a vital role in the Voting Rights Act. When it comes to music entertainment, it comes to James Brown, King of Funk. I might not get the funk right. It may be a little accent funk, but it's still funky. Okay. James Brown, the godfather of soul, whose music influenced funk and hip hop, baby. Whew, yes. Aretha Franklin, my girl. Yo, have you seen the Dave Chappelle Earthquake special? Who talked when he talked about Aretha Franklin's funeral? That was one of the funniest blue, 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 blue shit ever. Okay, if you have not watched it, check it out. Dave Chappelle is much respect, another leader, much respect. Black History Month, like I said. Anyway, Aretha Franklin, Queen of Soul, whose songs became like an anthem for civil rights and feminism. I mean, you gotta love being a woman. It just it's beautiful. I mean, I don't know what it is like to be a man, or, whatever your pronounces are, but it is just so beautiful, you know. Prince, a pioneer in so many way of blending. Ooh, blending of so many beautiful songs that became an anthem for so many of beautiful artistic rights. There was a there's a documentary currently. I don't even remember what platform we were watching it on. Um, but it was about Sly and the family. I mean, he reminded me of Prince. I mean, that was just so amazing. The music, the culture, the lyrics. A lot of times people just listen to the beat. Boom, 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 boom. And they're like, "Ah, we don't like that song." Listen to the lyrics. When you listen to the lyrics of the song and the flow and the beats and everything that comes with it. Oh my goodness. It is so beautiful. It is like a poetry mixed with songs and music and so many ways of beautiful things mixed together. Oh my god, it's like making love. Mm. When that connection is right and beautiful, right? So we've talked about all of those beautiful leaders. What about John Lewis, congressional? I think I talked about that as well, right? And all of the beautiful um, music and entertainer. But I cannot move forward without talking about one of my favorite artists of all time. I already said that I was gonna create a little outfit or sweats of like a Tupac and a Bob Marley on it, right? Tupac Shakur, who used hip hop to discuss social issues and uplift so many marginalized communities, that we see and we continue to see today. Not just Tupac Shakur, but also Biggie, as well. You know, Even though I have love for Shakur, Biggie also created a huge influence into the industry. We have to give love where love is deserved. We have to give love where love is deserved. No matter where we stand. No matter where we stand. No matter where we stand. Literature and journalism. For those who love to read and, enjoy this aspect of things, Toni Morrison, Nobel Prize winning an author who captured Black experiences in novels in so many beloved ways. James Baldwin, a powerful writer who explored race, sexuality, and identity in works like The Fire Next Time. Oh my goodness. All right. So I love poetry. I love poetry. I have not wrote poetry in a while. I think the last time I wrote poetry was when I was in college. Oh, it wasn't years ago, maybe around 2016, maybe when I was in college is when I wrote poetry. Maya Angelou. I will not continue this podcast without talking about my girl, Maya Angelou, a poet and activist whose work including I Know Who the Cage Bird Sings, which continues to remain very influential. One of the best book I read in college. I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings. I can still remember this book till today. Thank you so much for such knowledge. But of course, one of my favorite poet, Maya Angelou. Um, Beautiful. I wouldn't stop talking. I think I need to do a podcast just about her and so much love that I have for her work. Um, Ida B. Wells, an investigative and journalist who's exposed to horror of lynching in America. So it's not about just about entertainment, because a lot of times the stereotypical perception of what black is about is that, it's all about playing a certain type of sport or being involved with certain type of, career field. But there's diversity in everything. It doesn't matter who or what you are. There's knowledge in everything. It doesn't matter who or what you are, because it's exposed to all of us, because it's given from the good Lord to all of us, right? Whew. All right, so I hope I pronounce this name right, because I'm very big on name. I'm very respectful on name. So if I pronounce it wrong and you find my video and much respect to you and honor. Ta-Nehisi Coates, modern writer known for Between the World and Me in discussion of systematic racism. Then we go to sport. But thank you so much for all of those literature and journalism leadership, because it teaches our children to understand that you don't have to go into sport to be talented. You don't have to go into, social media to be talented. You can go into the book. You can open a book like this and understand that you can write a book like this and become talented. And understand that you can write a book like this and become talented. And understand that you can write a book, like this and become talented. That you are not limited into what society or into what the world assume that you're limited into being. You're only limited into what you allow your mind to be. Right. So then we have sport and activism, like Jackie Robinson, who worked the variant to baseball league, right? Muhammad Ali, the boxing championship, who, leader, legend and outspoken advocate for civil rights and anti-war effort, whose daughter just he didn't even started it, but his daughter picked up from it, Layla Ali, and carry on the torch and continues to carry on that torch. And not only her, but his legacy continues to carry on that torch. And that's what we must do. Legacies build legacies. A lot of times that's not, or it has not often been our focus as Black people, but it must be our focus in building this generation, is building legacy in what we do. Serena Williams, one of the greatest tennis player and advocating racial and gender equality. Not only Serena Williams, I have to also honor her sister, Venus Williams. Much respect to my women who stand out there against all odds when it's hard, when it's difficult, when they tell you you can't, and when you see and understand in the system that you're also working in that it's also not possible, but by the grace of God, you make it possible. Much honor, strength to you. Colin, who higher. Sorry if I mess up your last name. Kaepernick, who sparked a national conversation about police brutality through peaceful protests. Peaceful protests. It's always often starts with peaceful protests. But remember, you're always going to be perceived as the person who causes the problem. So you always must be caution about where you stand to be influential because we have to, no matter how hard it is, because that's the only way change can happen. That's the only way change can happen. And it's difficult because as humans, you want to be human, but you also want change. And you have to decide what is much or what is most important. Velma Randolph, the Olympic champion who became an adversity and also broke the barriers for Black female athletes. When it comes to art and films, I tell you earlier, I love art, right? I love poetry. I write poetry when I do have time and do my art, right? So, Jane Biscuit, the groundbreaking artist whose work explored race and empowerment in so many ways. Spike Lee, the filmmaker who brought Black culture and social issues into the forefront of what we see and continue to see in entertainment each and every day. Ava DuVernay, or Nay, the director known for Selma and the 13th, addressing racial justice issues that we face, experience, endure, or even maybe have heard of. Whether we have acknowledged it, whether we have accepted it, it is completely up to us. But it still exists, right? Virgil Abloh fashion designer who Bridget the streetwear and high fashion with off-white and Louis Vuitton. Oh my goodness. Yes. And Khalid Wali, artist famous for painting Barack Obama. Barack Obama. Wow, it say my president. When they be like, who your president is, I'm like, my president is Barack Obama. Who your first lady is? Michelle Obama. Much honor, right? So, besides just being able to talk about Black leaders in America who made cultural impact, I also wanted to talk about other things as well. So, what are those other topics? Let's see. Let's see. So, okay. I wanted to talk about Black people who have been killed and how their deaths have made change in America and also not only in America, but around the world. Because a lot of times There are people who don't travel around the world. There are people who don't listen to the news. I have made a decision in my life not to listen to the daily news. It is so depressing. So I don't listen to it, but I still hear it because of the work that I do, and of course the people that I love and support who knows that this is a safe space to be able to vent. I listen. So, but I wanted to talk about some of the black people who have been killed and whose deaths have made change in America. This is gonna be probably one of my longest podcasts, and and it's okay because I wanted to be able to dedicate this time to my people. But I'm not only dedicating this time to my people, but I'm dedicating this time to everyone. Because when I'm educating, or when I am learning, right? Um, it enhances all of us as humans, or whatever the good Lord has created out there for us to be learning from. You know, there are so many different tragic deaths, of course, that have significantly impacted how we think, how we perceive our own country, how we perceive policies in the country and around the world, how people perceive us around the world, how we perceive ourselves in this country. There's so much division. Black, white, Hispanics. I think sometimes in my field, some of the most discouraging things that I see is where I see people who are from the same space, same place, same country, same nationality, same continent, who don't want to associate or be characterized as similar. you know if I'm Mexican, I don't want to be perceived as Puerto Rican or Puerto Rican. And much respect, and I apologize if didn't pronounce it properly. You know, so those things kind of this makes my heart sad. Because we are all one people. So but there's so many tragic things that we've experienced: movement, policy changes, cultural shift in America and beyond, that impacts how we feel and think and perceive, and teaches our own day-to-day interactions in life. Emmett Till in 1955, you know 14-year-old boy from Chicago who was brutally lynched in Mississippi for allegedly whistling at a white woman. You know, this open casket was such a horror of racism, which, of course, led to the civil rights movement. And this movement helped, inspire Rosa Parks and also the Montgomery boycotts. But I mean, Boy Scouts, Bus Scouts, you know. Um, so you see how one tragedy led to so many different change, but it had to cause that situation to happen, to that change. Why does it have to have that? Why does it have to be that way? Why does it have to be that way? You know, Medgar Evers in 1963. What happened there? There was a civil rights activist in the NAACP leader who was assassinated outside his home in Mississippi. His death intensified the push for civil rights legislations in Civil Rights Act of the 1964, and which was passed shortly after that, right? I talked earlier about Martin Luther King Jr. in one of our leader. We talked about, it's so ironic. Earlier this couple of weeks ago, I was completing or having a conversation and someone expressed to me they were talking to their child about something, and about Black History Month, and they were not even aware that this was being taught in schools, you know that this is not taught in schools in America. Black History Month, why is this history not being taught in schools? Why is Native American histories not being taught in schools? Why is Caucasian history not being taught in schools? If it is Caucasian history being taught in school, why is that the only history being taught in schools? Why is Hispanic history not being taught in schools? Why is Indian history not being taught in schools? Why is Pakistani history not being taught in schools? Why is Afghanistani history not being taught in school? Why are all these individual cultural differences or cultural nations of people that build our communities not being taught in schools? We talk about walls blocking people from coming into countries. Yet, how do we expect these roads that we drive on to be built? How do we expect our children in the cafeterias at the schools to be fed? How do we expect our toilets to be cleaned? It's not always us who got on the fancy clothes and the fancy house or the fancy roof that wants to do those jobs. There are people who are willing to do it. All they're asking for is a safe haven. We're not saying accept everybody, but we're saying that those who deserve to be here should be, and they shouldn't have to be penalized for those who make the choices not to be. So, going back to my leaders, Martin Luther King, Fred Hampton, 1969, the chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party, who was assassinated in police raid, which exposed, of course, a lot of illegal action against Black activists, which, of course, fueled the distrust against governments, surveillance, and programs, which continues to be a distrust today, right? But of course, we still live in those situations. Amador Diallo, 1999, a 23-year-old Guinean immigrant who was shot 41 times by an NYPD officers who mistook his wallet for a gun. I'm not saying that there have not been changes to any of these things, but I do want us to understand our history. Understanding our history does not mean that it leads to hate or resentment. It should lead to awareness and change. What type of change? Positive change for all of us. For all of us. Because that's important if that's what we want. Not only for what we want, but for the children that we're raising, the generation. Because whatever we are showing and portraying is what the next generation would also show and portray. So, what are we teaching them to become? Sean Bell in 2006. He was killed by NYPD officer on the morning of his wedding day in a barrage of 50 bullets. It led to a protest and a call for police accountability, even though those officers were set free. I'm not asking for revenge. I'm not asking for any violence. I'm asking for is peace and communion within our community. I'm not referencing on any of these resources or information for violence, but for peace. To understand what our actions and decisions often lead us to, but at the same time, how we can come together as people to understand that we're one and we're all fighting for the same cause and we're all important. Trayvon Martin in 2012, most recently, right? A 17-year-old who was fatally shot, and the claim was self defense, and the perpetrator was evicted, which ignited the Black Lives Matter movement, pushing for justice for racial motivated killings. I understand, I respect the idea of, you know, all lives matters. That is beautiful and that is true and that is muchly respected. And one of the things that I often say is that all life matters because of life, because all life matters. Black lives matters because Black lives is part of all lives. So why are there rules and racial discriminations? Not only about just Black lives, but the Indians. Why are there people who've been in this country that we call our home, who are the origin national homeowner of this country? Why do they have to request for what they need? Right? Not going into that. That's another podcast. But anyway, but yeah, all lives matters. But Black Lives Matters as well. Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, 2014, died after being put in a chokehold by NYPD officers. And this caused a rally of cry for police reform. A rally of cry for police reform. Michael Brown, 2014, an unarmed teenager who was shot by police officer in a Ferguson, Missouri area. And this led to a national-wide protest, the rise hands-on movement and the movement of justice investigation. Tamar Rice, 2014, a 12-year-old who was shot by police while playing with a toy gun. The increased scrutiny of police brutality against Black children. I'm not saying that police are bad. I love my officers. I am a mental health clinician. When I need help, guess who I call? I call my officers. And guess who shows up? Every time they do. So I am not saying these things to bash the police officers, the firefighters, the rescuers who shows up, the social justice providers who leave their families day in and day out to make the sacrifices out there for civilians, because I understand what that sacrifice looks like. I honor you and I thank you for what you do, because I know the type of work you do. I'm not saying these statistics or I'm not calling out these names. You know, I mentioned NYPD multiple times. I've never worked in NYPD department, so I don't even have a clue of how that department works. This is just what I'm, what has happened. But I do know that there are beautiful and great workers and staff who make a huge difference in the NYPD department every day. So I don't want the world and society to take this as a negative, just as awareness. And how can you go into whatever space you need to go into and make a change, right? Because it's not just about these people who are out there and trying to figure it out, or who are making the mistakes, but what are you also doing as well? So I honor those NYPD staffs and leaders all over different police departments, fire departments, rescue departments, 911, 988, all the little social places that helps. Thank you. You're saving lives. I honor you. This is not a discreditation to what you do or disrespect to what you do. It's just an information to our people. Uh, Sandra Bland, 2015, uh, who died in a police she died in police custody after being arrested during a traffic stop. A simple I was about to say it was a bit cursing word. A simple stop. This was a case I actually looked into. There was a time where I was pursuing law, but this was a case I actually looked into. So I kind of it's emotional space for me. So who was pulled over after an arrest during a traffic stop, and of course this case highlights racial disparities in policing, and which is inspiring some of the say her name, the hashtag say her name movement, which focus on violence against black women, because Sandra Bland spoke so highly of the things that she went through, experiences, but so much of the experiences that we all go through as African American women, men, student, young, black, old, and even as people, even if you're not, African American, but if you're a person of color, you may have some similarity of you, even if you're not. There are times, even if you're socioeconomically different from certain individuals, how that may be perceived as well, right? Then we have Alton Sterling, 2006. He was, who was shot and killed by police while selling CDs outside a store in Louisiana. And this sparked into a national protest and federal, investigation into police use of force, which continue to be investigated, and we're still investigating. You know, um, Philando Castile in 2006, fatally shot by police during a traffic stop in front of his girlfriend and his child. And sometimes that's how the brutality extend. It doesn't matter who it's in front of. It can be in front of our children, you know, and that has to change. That must change because we're humans. We're not animals. We're humans. We're humans.